Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and welcome to Primetime Crisis. Today I'm talking about the Amazon Tick pilot. The time has finally arrived, and here's the thing I never thought I'd get to talk about on Primetime Crisis, at least, up until about a year and a half ago. And even then, after we heard about this new show, for a while there was no news, there was kind of nothing, and it was somewhat debated as to whether or not it was really going to happen. And at that time, it was supposed to be with Patrick Warburton, and then that fell through because he was in another show, and I think that show has subsequently been canceled, so it looks like maybe he could have done this after all, which is kind of a shame, I think, now that I've seen this pilot, because I'm not sure how I feel about Sarah Nifowitz, and I kind of think Patrick Warburton could have done the job, even though this is a very different show, but I'll get there in a minute. So, we got a pilot. That's all we have so far, and this may not actually go to series. The way Amazon Prime decides whether or not something goes to series is really a really interesting and kind of weird model. They have three it reminds me very much of Cartoon in the 90s. On Cartoon Network, where there would be different cartoons and different shorts, and you would vote on which one would go to series, and that's how we got Cow and Chicken, and how we got the Powerpuff Girls, and shows like that. And we're kind of doing that with the Tick. Okay, the problem is those were all new things, and you wouldn't have been invested in them before that. This is the Tick. I'm so nervous that this isn't going to go to series, especially because I feel like I need more of it to really get my bearings with it. It is it's a parody of modern day dramas, especially gritty superhero stuff, and it's using the long-form storytelling, internet streaming approach, and also making fun of that stuff all at the same time. And so this is not a pilot that really stands on its own. I think it gets a lot done in this first episode, and gives us an origin for the Tick and the Arthur getting together in the first place. It's very different from what we've seen before, and I'll talk about all that in a little bit, but it's a thing that I'm gonna be so sad and bummed out about if I don't get the rest of it, because I feel like I almost can't even have a fully formed opinion of it until I see where it's going. Because, it's reading the first chapter of a novel. That's what it is. You get to watch these pilots. There's 3 comedies. I haven't watched the other 2. I'm assuming they all came up at the same time. And you take a survey at the end and talk about how you felt about it, and I guess whichever show has the best reception, that's the show that goes to series, and I think they're only picking one, so there's a really good chance that this doesn't make it. And I suppose Ben Edlund could shop it around and see if Netflix or Hulu or somebody else wants it. Maybe it won't be dead even if it doesn't get picked up. And it would be kind of a coup if it went to Netflix if it doesn't make it on Amazon, because, again, I feel like a lot of what it's responding to and making fun of is over there. There's so much first season Daredevil in this. And anyway, so like I said, it's a very different approach and with the Tick and take on it. It is, of course, that same brand of absurdity, and the Tick is more or less exactly the same as we've heard him and seen him written before. I say that because it's Ben Edlund writing Ben Edlund's Tick. Whoever is in the role, whoever's doing the voice or wearing the costume, is gonna bring their own sensibilities to it and give their own and have their own approach. But Ben Edlund is just writing the Tick, and it's fascinating because he's writing a Tick that is just like he's always been. He's very much out of time and doesn't have any kind of a perspective of perception of time or what era he's living in or anything really. And so we basically just took that character and threw him in a gritty Netflix show. And that should be hilarious. It's not laugh out loud funny yet. And I think this is overall a show that is not really meant to give you belly laughs. It's not really a sitcom. It's being billed that way, and I'm not in love with that because I really feel like it is a comedy drama. It is a parody thing, but it's not it's not a farce. It's got a lot of real drama. There's some real weight here, especially with Arthur's backstory, and I'm finding him fascinating. There's a real character study there, and he's this really sad, tragic character so far, and it is very much his story, which it ought to be. There were inklings of that in both of the other Tick shows, and here we're just full tilt, making this a show about Arthur trying to keep his sanity in a really messed up world. And in this case, it's our world with superheroes added to it, basically. So, I mean, again, there is a lot of absurdity, but the way it's playing it, at least from where I'm sitting, it feels like the idea is the world that we live in is already messed up, is already as absurd as anything Ben Edlund could possibly come up with. And there's maybe a little bit of cynicism even in that notion, but the idea is the world isn't normal. It's not what we wish we could describe as normal, and so the superheroes and supervillains are kind of a response to the weirdness and the madness and the wrongness in the world as we already have it. I'm a little bit surprised by how not over the top and out there all the regular people are. Like, there is certainly some comedy in just discussions people have with each other, but nobody so far, maybe this will change as we go along, but nobody so far is just like a really extreme personality. There's a lot of commentary about the unwholesome way people treat each other, and how people have kind of accepted the idea that the world is just a bad place and there's nothing they can do to change it. And the really sad thing is that superheroes haven't helped. So in this pilot, we learn that there was a superhero who's basically Superman, who doesn't age. So we basically have the immortal again, you know, from the live action Tick series, except he's a presence here and doesn't die. Where he crash lands in like 1909, and he fights the Terror for decades. So the Terror is his arch nemesis, and the Terror keeps aging, and of course he doesn't age. And I imagine if the series continues, we'll play around a little bit with that idea, with mortality, and with how that seems like it's liable to be a big character motivation for the Terror, especially because, and I'll have some minor spoilers here, in case you haven't seen it, but especially like I'm seeing little bits of thematic stuff that we might run with as it goes along, like when the Terror meets a younger Arthur, which is really interesting. The Terror is responsible for Arthur's tragic backstory, and this time Arthur isn't becoming a superhero just because he feels like he needs to do something, like destiny is calling him. This time it's because he has a tragic backstory. He has a death in of someone he cared about in the past that was caused by the Terror, and when the Terror meets him, he and like this plays as dark comedy, and it's scary and sad before it's funny, I think. He picks up Arthur's ice cream, and he just like drenches his face in it and walks off. And so like there's kind of maybe a loss of childhood thing that's gonna happen with that. I don't want to read it until we have more of it, but there's definitely kind of a sense maybe in just that one scene we get with the Terror. And by the way, Jackie Earle Haley is fantastic in that role. But there's maybe this idea that the Terror is lashing out at the world for getting old, and that's potentially fascinating, and I love that we've got some real storytelling going on, and that it's not just an absurd farce, and that it's not just an excuse to make another dark, gritty thing. There's a reason that the world looks the way it does, and I love the idea of the Tick juxtaposed with that, because again, the Tick is just the Tick. But let's get into him a little bit. The thing I am most trepidatious about, well, besides the format, Let me mention that real fast before I go on to Peter Serafinowicz. I don't like that this is a half-hour comedy show, or that it's in the half-hour format. It being a long-form, serialized, chapter-by-chapter kind of story, I feel like it could really use 45 minutes to an hour, and that just because it's got comedic sensibilities doesn't mean it has to be shorter. It's not just making fun of those kinds of shows, it is that kind of show. It should be longer, I think. But it did, as I said, it got quite a bit done in the pilot, so that's impressive. And I suppose it could get longer. Like the nice thing about these streaming shows is that they're not really married to a format to a length. So you watch House of Cards and the run times fluctuate. So that might happen with this too. We might get some episodes that are 40, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, depending on what happens in them and how much time they need to tell that part of the story. I would love to see that kind of fluctuation, since it's not going to be broadcast and there's not commercials and things. Peter Serafinowicz might grow on me. My immediate reaction is the script is better than the performance, and that I really do miss Warburton, and I'm surprised I'm saying that. I was really excited about Serafinowicz. I think that his comic sensibilities are right for this part. I don't know if he's right for this part. I'm not sure yet. He really feels like a stand-in to me. Some of that is Edlin's fault, I have to say. Edlin does that Jeff Foxworthy thing where he continues to have his characters say a lot of the same lines of dialogue. And I didn't mind it in the live-action show because I assumed that a lot of the people watching that show hadn't seen the cartoon show and certainly wouldn't have read the comics. And you have such a different line delivery from Patrick Warburton than you did from Townsend Coleman. And it's in a lot of different contexts. So like Dirty Pool, Gravity is a Harsh Mistress, a lot of that stuff played in different places, and I was kind of happy to see it again. But I don't love that Serafinowicz is given so many of the same lines from the live-action 2001 pilot. That surprised me a little bit, and the context isn't different enough, and the line deliveries feel generic before they feel like a new read on it. Again, that's just my immediate reaction. I wasn't in love with Patrick Warburton the first time I saw him either, so I could see this performance maybe growing on me a little bit, but he feels like he has his hands tied behind his back a little bit. One of the big problems, of course, is that people are going to be comparing him to Warburton, and weirdly, it's not enough of a different take that it feels like it needs a different actor, and I really expected it would feel that way. The world certainly does, and the approach in the storytelling is certainly different, but it is, again, a juxtaposition thing where you have the over-the-top, lighthearted Tick, although he does seem like he might get to the more disturbing places like he did in the comics, which is kind of exciting. He has this obsession with destiny, and the Tick always has that, but here it seems dangerous in a way it hasn't before, and not in as much of an endearing way, where he says, I do whatever destiny tells me to, almost like destiny is a voice in his head, and he talks about destiny as like a female entity, almost as if there's this personified destiny that's talking directly to him, which is really interesting because Arthur, for a lot of the episode, thinks that the Tick might just be a voice in his head, and he thinks that the Tick represents his madness, and so it's kind of interesting that the Tick also kind of has that going on, but of course, he actually has that because he's more or less a crazy person, and sometimes endearing, but a crazy person, and so it looks like it might go to those wild and sometimes scary places that shows that were intended for kids to be able to watch wouldn't have had so much. This is a TV-14 show. It has some language. It has some. It has. Like not really rough violence, but it has some references to rough violence, and we see a couple of things, and anyway, it's certainly not for your kids, so I should mention that, and I'm not going to begrudge it that, because the comics weren't either, and it wouldn't work as a reaction to, in a parody of current, edgy street-level superhero things, in the cynical world we find ourselves in, if it was also trying to be okay for kids. And in fact, I think it could even step that stuff up more and go even a little bit farther with it if it wanted to. But there are, so the fact that I could imagine Patrick Warburton in this role and with this Arthur is a problem. So far, again, they haven't been on screen together for very long yet, so this could be, so I mean, I'm admitting that this is possibly premature, but it's just my immediate gut reaction. I don't see the palpable chemistry between them yet that I did the Tick and Arthur from the live-action pilot, and I did feel like I had that from the very beginning. I feel like this guy and Patrick Warburton, Patrick Stewart as the Tick would be fascinating. But I feel like this, and by the way, this Arthur is amazing. He's fantastic. He and, there's a lot of pathos there in a thing that's really absurd, and I'm impressed with that. But I feel like he would have more to work with Patrick Warburton. I don't feel like Saranifowicz really has a take on it yet. He feels like he's still trying to get his bearings and figure out what his approach is going to be. He seems like he's worked really hard on a voice. And of course, he's a British guy, so he's faking an American accent. And what he's doing sounds like the Tick. It sounds like kind of a weird cross breed between the Townsend Coleman performance and the Patrick Warburton performance. And I feel like I could see it more if he was just voicing the Tick in animation than actually putting him on screen. I think I like his voice. Some of his line deliveries I'm not sure about. I didn't see much of a comic timing. And again, it's hard not to expect Warburton and that kind of comic sensibility, because that's all we've seen on screen for this character, and he's delivering a lot of the same lines and the same kinds of lines, so that becomes problematic. But I'm not seeing a comic timing yet. I also think that he's held back by the mask. I was kind of glad to finally see an attempt at putting a mask on the Tick, but we're not getting a performance from behind that, and so he feels again like he kind of has his hands tied behind his back. The bottom line for me is that it feels like the script and the production are carrying him along, and he's just kind of a part of the set dressing. I should mention, I do really appreciate the fact that we still have the moving antennae. I was wondering if we would get that. We still have that. That's exciting. But he's just kind of there so far, and I'm kind of bummed to say that. But I feel like there's this real concerted effort from the production, from every part of the production, to make him feel like a massive, nigh invulnerable behemoth, and I'm just not buying it. And obviously, you can't be as massive without a lot of CG work in a mocap suit or something. I'm kind of glad we're not going that way, and I don't think that you could afford to do that regularly on a TV budget anyway. But without that, you couldn't have that even with Patrick Warburton. So his Tick was still smaller than you would expect, and there were times where he did things that you didn't really buy. You were seeing him do, but there was this kind of tongue-in-cheekness about it. And with this, I'm just not, even in a silly and tongue-in-cheek way, I'm just not buying it. It doesn't feel like there's a joke I'm in on. It feels like I'm supposed to buy this Tick as massive, and he's just not. He's tall, but he doesn't have Warburton's build, and it's not really working. A lot of people didn't like the suit. I don't care for it either, but in the context of it, I do think it's a little better, because I think the idea is that it's making fun of this notion that superhero suits have to look more functional than they do on a comic page, and that they have to look more realistic. I like Arthur's suit a lot when we finally get to see it. And I didn't right away until we saw all of it, and it's pretty neat. And again, it feels like what you'd get if you had Arthur in the Daredevil Netflix show. So the Tick suit might start to grow on me more as we move along if there's more attention drawn to that's the point of it. And I'm, again, very interested in how it handles the comic book idea that the Tick is, that the Tick thinks that his costume is his skin. And if we deal with that, and there's a lot of things I'm wondering about with the Tick versus with this Tick versus other incarnations. Are we gonna finally get Spoon, in live action? Is he gonna say that? Is that gonna be a thing? The big takeaway for me is, oh cool, it's a character study for Arthur, and he's a really interesting and sad character. And the Tick is fascinating in being everything he needs, and also everything that's really bad for him, all at the same time. I really like this idea of the Terror as the kingpin of crime, that everybody thinks he's dead, and he is working underground and nobody knows he's still around, and he's actually running the whole city and is more powerful than he's ever been. I didn't know what I would think of that in the context of it. I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's a great premise for the start of the show, especially again in making fun of Daredevil. There's definitely a ton of potential here. I don't know how much of an audience there is for this. I don't mean to say that it doesn't know what it is or it doesn't know who its audience is. It definitely does. But a lot of the people that would have been excited to see this in the first place will be fans of the Patrick Warburton show, and I imagine a lot of them won't like this because it's not that at all. It's, like I said, I didn't laugh out loud a lot. There are several things that I thought were amusing, and I liked the overall absurdity of it, juxtaposed with that grittiness. But it's definitely not exactly not that at all. I mean, it's not that show. It's not that performance. And I feel like if Patrick Warburton were in this role and giving the exact same performance with this script, this show would do gangbusters, and a lot of people would flock to it that probably won't otherwise. Again, I'm really surprised I'm saying that. I was really glad that he wasn't cast with a different Arthur and with a different approach, but the approach to the Tick himself is not really different, while the approach to the world and the kind of storytelling we're doing is. I really hope he finds his footing, and I hope he gets a chance to find his footing, and I'm really interested to see what you folks thought of this. If you saw the pilot, leave your comments, let me know, and in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan, and I'll see you again with more videos here on the channel very shortly.